namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. Unfortunate for us that Radha Pramod Prabhu is not there to share his mind maps because he is traveling to Vrindavan. He is in Vrindavan right now. So, but he has promised that he will hear the recording and make the mind map and send it to us sometime during the week. So till then you may have to tolerate. So without that, so I will do my traditional recap today then, even though it's not that exciting as what Radha Pramod Prabhu presents, but nevertheless, and it's only text, there is not going to be any colors and and all of that. So I'll do a quick recap of what we have seen. We have been discussing about Jiva Tattva from Caitanya Siksamrita, first chapter, fourth part, which talks about the Jiva Tattva. But we were discussing certain points from Jayavadharma also on this topic. So I will very quickly recap what we have seen, and hopefully we'll complete that section today and start the section on Achinta Beda Bed today. So I'll do a quick recap. So in the 16th chapter of Jayavadharma, of course, we did discuss 15th chapter and I have recapped it a few times, so I'm not doing it again. I'll very quickly go through this, just sort of summarize what we have seen. So Vrajanath asked Gopal Guru Goswami that, Raghunath Das Babaji, that if the Jiva is a spiritual substance, then why does he have to descend into this degraded material world? And Raghunath Das Babaji says that, look, actually the Jivera Swarup hoy Krishna Nityadas. The Swarupa of the Jiva is that he is servant of Krishna. But because he has turned his face away from Krishna, he is covered by this Maya. And that Maya, through its Prakshepatmika Shakti, through the Avaranatmika Shakti, covers his real constitutional position as being servant of Krishna. And through the Prakshepatmika Shakti, it makes him identify with the body of, with this material body. And identifying with that body, whatever actions that he performs, he is bound by the karma for that activity. Okay. And then he talks about the various kinds of conscious entities. He talks about the Nitya Parshadas in the Goloka and Vaikunta. He talks about the Kaya Vyuha Rupa, the Chit Shakti's expansions of Lalita Devi, Vishaka Devi, Radharani, and all that. And then there are the Tatastha Jivas who emanate from Karanodakashai Vishnu, and they are, because they are neighboring both the material world and the spiritual world, they can see both, and therefore they can get attracted to either of them. And these Tatastha Jivas are of three types: Nitya Mukta, Nitya Baddha, and Sadhana Siddha Jivas. There are three categories. And because they are marginal in nature, because of their tiny size, and also because of their proximity to the material world, they are vulnerable to get influenced by the Maya potency, right? So at this point of time, Vrajanath asks Raghunath Das Babaji that, okay, I understand this Tatastha position of the Jiva, but how is it that some Jivas choose to turn their face towards Krishna, or choose to turn their face towards a spiritual aspiration, and some Jivas turn their face towards material aspiration? How is it? So Raghunath Das Babaji says, free will of the Jiva. Okay, just like Krishna has his free will, Krishna's Amsha should also have at least free will in as an Amsha, at least an Amsha of that free will. minuscule free will he has to have. So when he properly utilizes that free will, then he remains connected with Krishna. But when he misuses his free will, he disassociates himself with Krishna and starts exploiting and enjoying this material nature. Okay. So therefore, the sole cause for this is improper or proper use of the free will. Then Vrajanath asks that, look, I understand, but the Supreme Lord is Karunamaya. He is unlimitedly merciful. So therefore, why should he create these kind of weak jivas who become vulnerable to the influence of Maya? Raghunath Das Babaji says, look, the Lord is not just Karunamaya, the Lord is Leelamaya also. And he wants the jiva to be active participants in his Leela. So therefore, he has not made the Tatastha jivas weak and vulnerable, but rather he has made them versatile, that uh, he can experience the most degraded feeling of suffering in this material world in one of the lower species to the most amazing experience of Mahabhav. So in this way, the jiva has been made versatile. So what is the problem? So, and the Lord has given the jiva the versatility, the opportunity, and the choice. So the jiva can make the choice to move from lower stage to the higher stage. So what is the problem in that? So Vrajanath asks, okay, but why should the Supreme Lord allow the individual jivas to suffer so that the Lord can enjoy his Leela? Just so that the Lord wants the jivas to participate in his Leela, why should the Supreme Lord allow the living entities to suffer? Is that wrong? Isn't that wrong on the part of the Supreme Lord? Raghunath Das Babaji says that, Vrajanath, you should try to understand, uh, what an amazing special grace of the Supreme Lord it is to exercise one's free will. If we don't have free will, we will become inert matter. Huh? So he says that what we consider as suffering or pleasure for one person could be the exact opposite for another person. It is all a different condition of the mind. Okay. So in this material world, pleasure or pain eventually results in pain only. So therefore, this pain actually leads to, when it is persistent, this pain actually leads to a natural sense of inquiry and inquisitiveness in the jiva. And this inquisitiveness creates a favorable attitude to receive sadhu sangha. So therefore, eventually, and that sadhu sangha leads to the manifestation of shraddha, and that shraddha matures into prema, and that prema matures into mahabhav. So therefore, the suffering that is there in this material world is actually ultimately a boon. It is actually a boon. Just like impure gold is purified by firing it and repeatedly hammering it in order to purify it. Similarly, the jiva also, which has been contaminated by this impure desire to enjoy in this material world, he can be purified by the fire and hammering of excruciating material experiences. So therefore, what you perceive as suffering eventually is actually mercy by Krishna. This is how far-sighted visionaries see it. But the myopic materialists, they will see it as suffering. But in reality, it is actually pleasure only. Raghunath says, look, I understand. What you say is right. It is ultimately very pleasurable, but currently it is very painful only. Na? Can't the Lord make it ultimately pleasurable? And even before that, also can't it be pleasurable? Give a pleasurable experience to the jiva, and then eventually let him take shelter of Krishna and make that also is pleasurable. Then Raghunath Das Babaji says, look, You want to take the position of Krishna? You think you have an intelligence better than Krishna? Huh? So Krishna is ultimate autocrat. He is the supreme autocrat. And he has the best intelligence. And no one can understand the intelligence of Krishna and the plan of Krishna. Nahiyasya karhichid rajan puman veda viditsitum. Yad vijigyasaya yukta muyyanti kavayopihi. One cannot understand the plan of Krishna. Right? But one cannot doubt his benevolence also. Even though the plans may seem to be painful for us right now. But we cannot doubt the benevolence of Krishna. Okay. So when the supreme autocrat performs Leela, this is also one of the Leela that he performs. So, and as cooperating participants of that Leela, as a part of that Leela, some pain may also come, some hardship may also come, right? So therefore, if finally all these material hardships and pain turns into the most auspicious state, or rather this pain acts as a beautiful contrast for experiencing the bliss of Krishna consciousness, the bliss of relationship with Krishna, then why should one call it an adversity? Why can't one accept it as pleasure ultimately? Okay. So um, therefore he says that on the transcendental platform, the tribulations of the jiva while trying to satisfy the Lord in his pastimes are by all accounts pleasurable, which means eventually it will lead to the most auspicious thing. So in trying to serve Krishna, in trying to please devotees, in trying to protect our relationships with devotees, if you have to go through trials and tribulations, it's auspicious, because a relationship with Krishna and relationship with devotees is auspicious. But it can be painful, but it is worth doing it, because ultimately it is the association of Krishna and association of the devotees which is going to um, uh, give us the ultimate pleasure. But if one misuses his free will, then he embraces Maya and he suffers. So who is to be blamed? Why you are ready to blame Krishna for that? It is a living entity which is supposed to be blamed. Then Rajanath asks, look, why give free will at all to the jiva? Because the Lord knows that he will misuse the free will. So knowing very well that the jiva will misuse his free will, why should the Lord give him this free will? Raghunath Das Babaji says, look, you can't imagine your situation if I take your free will away from you. This Swatantrata Ratna is one of the rarest gems. This is the most valuable gems. Okay. If none of the living entities in this world were given free will, then there will not be any significant living entity in this free will, in this material world. Everything will be Jadavastu only. Okay. So therefore, you should understand that to have this free will, a free choice to choose what to do and what not to do, you know, that is what actually gives pleasure. Otherwise, if one is always forced to take choice, if they don't have a free will of their own, it is such a disgusting thing actually. One may choose to voluntarily surrender their free will out of love, but that is another thing. But again, they have a choice to surrender their free will. But if the choice is not there, then it is very, very depressing actually. Okay. But the point is that there is a choice, there is a chance of misusing the free will also. But anyone would rather choose an opportunity to misuse their free will, but rather have it, misuse their free will and suffer, than to not have any free will at all. So you're not understanding this point. So he says, and don't think that when the jiva misuses his free will, the Lord lets the jiva suffer eternally. The Lord follows the jiva just like a shadow. a shadow follows. And he keeps making various plans in order to make the jiva somehow turn towards him and utilize his free will properly so that he can enjoy eventually, right? So the Supreme Lord is not happy to put the rebellious souls suffer. The Supreme Lord suffers also. So therefore he follows the jiva just like a shadow, and so that eventually he can help him in some way or other. And eventually he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, uh, uh, in order to give the most powerful and successful process and the easiest process, which is the path of pure devotional service, especially through the means of Harinam Sankirtan, right? So therefore, my dear Rajanath, how can you blame such a magnanimous Lord, right? Don't blame him for giving you your free will, because if you did not have that free will, it would have been terrible time. Then Rajanath asks, oh, if the Lord is not to be blamed, then it is Maya which has to be blamed. She is our enemy, Rajanath says. If only the Lord would not have created this Maya, then we would not have suffered. Raghunath Das Babaji says, look, Maya assists the Lord in his mission of helping the soul properly utilize his free will and take shelter of him. Okay, so she is the maid servant of Krishna. But when the jiva forgets his constitutional position, then um, then he is handed over to Maya Devi, who uh, who is perceived by that jiva to be like a witch, right? But Maya Devi takes the role of the prison superintendent so that the jiva can get rectified, and actually she assists the jiva to understand his mistake, rectify his mistake, and turn towards Krishna. Then Rajanath asks, so if the material world is a prison, then what are the chains which are binding the jiva? So Raghunath Das Babaji says the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Then Rajanath asks, if the jiva is spiritual and the three modes are material, then how can that material chains of the three modes bind the spiritual jiva? So Raghunath Das Babaji says, look, you are right. Actually, the material chains of sattva, rajas, and tamas cannot bind the jiva, but it can bind the subtle body of the jiva, which the jiva is wrongly identifying as. So in reality, jiva, the three modes of material nature cannot control the jiva. As long as the jiva not wrongly identify as, so it is just like, there is a giant magnet. There is a giant, huge magnet. Okay. And there is a big piece of iron rod. So when you are carrying that iron rod close to the magnet, at some point when the rod enters into the strong magnetic field of that magnet, then the magnet pulls that rod, and because you are holding the rod, the person also gets attracted and gets stuck to the magnet. But in one sense, the magnet has no power to attract that person. But if only he gives up that rod, he leaves that rod, the rod will get attracted, but the jiva cannot, but the person cannot. Similarly, if the jiva stops identifying with the linga sharira, the subtle body, then the jiva cannot be, as long as he gets attracted and identifies with that, then it seems like the three modes are affecting the jiva. But the moment he gives up that identification, the jiva cannot actually be controlled by the three modes. That's what he's telling. Okay. Then Rajanath asks, what are the activities of the jiva which are held captive in the prison house of Maya Devi? So he says that they are engaged in activities which are driven by Atmendriya Preeti. and then their activities are for sukha pravritti and dukkha nivritti, to enhance the pleasure and to decrease the suffering, like that. So this is something that we saw from the this is a quick recap. This is the last recap of this Jaiva Dharma episode. Now I'll quickly recap what we saw from Sri Chaitanya Siksamrita, and then we will move forward. So in Chaitanya Siksamrita, we saw that Mahaprabhu explained to Sanatan Goswami about the nature of Jiva Tattva. So he says that Krishna is one non-dual substance, Advaya Jnana Tattva Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, Swarupa Shakti Rupe Tara Haya Avasthan. So he has his own Swarupa and he has his Shakti also. In this way he exists. Swamsha Vibhinnamsha Rupe Haya Vistar, Ananta Vaikunta Brahmande Karena Vihar. And through his Swamsha and Vibhinnamsha expansions, Vibhinnamsha is the Jiva, Swamsha is Vishnu Tattva expansions. He performs pastimes in the spiritual world and in the material world. Swamsha Vistara Chaturvyuha Avatara Gana Vibhinnamsha Jivatara Shaktite Ganana. So he says Swamsha are the Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha and Vasudeva, the Chaturvyuha and the other expansions, and the Vibhinnamshas are the Jiva. And Shaktite Ganana, they are his Shakti. So they are Shakti Tattva also and Amsha also. Amsha, Vibhinnamsha, Shakti, but Parashakti, right? Say Vibhinnamsha Jiva Duita Prakar, Eka Nitya Mukta, Eka Nitya Samsar. So this Jiva is of two types. Actually, we saw many types of Jivas. Two broad classification is the Nitya Parshadas and Tatastha Jivas. And within Tatastha Jivas, there are three types: Nitya Mukta, Nitya Baddha, and Sadhana Siddha. Three types. But here for ease, Bhaktivinoda Thakur does not go into so much details, or Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami simplifies it by telling there are the Vibhinnamsha Jivas are of two categories. Some are eternally liberated and some are eternally conditioned. Nitya Mukta, Nitya Krishna Charane Unmukha, Krishna Parishada Nama Bhunjay Seva Sukha. So he puts this Nitya Mukta and Nitya Parshadas all in one category only and says Nitya Mukta, Nitya Krishna Charane Unmukha. So the Nitya Mukta is always favorable towards lotus feet of Krishna, and he is called the Parshada of Krishna. But this Nitya Bandha, Krishna Haita Nitya Bahirmukha, Nitya Samsara Bunje Narakadi Dukha. But this Nitya Bandha, he has eternally turned his face away from Krishna, and therefore he suffers the samsara eternally. And how this Nitya Baddha interacts with Maya Devi, he says, Sei doshe Maya Pishachi Danda Kare Tare, Adhyatmikadi Tapatre Tare Jari Mare. So Maya Devi tries to inspire this Jiva to take shelter of Krishna by giving him Adhyatmik Adibhautik Adidaivik Kleshas. Kama Krodera Dasahaya Tara Lati Khai, Brahmite Brahmite Yadi Sadhu Vaidya Pai. तारा उपदेश मंत्र पिशाची पलाए कृष्ण भक्ति पाए तबे कृष्ण निकट आए. So he says, in this way, being kicked by the lati of Maya Devi in the form of Kama, Krodha, etc., sometimes he may be fortunate enough to come in touch with a devotee who is like a doctor, spiritual doctor, and by taking the upadesh from him, by the guidance from him, he can drive away this pishachi, or this witch of Maya Devi, which is perceived as a witch by the living entity, but in reality, she's not a witch. She's a very chaste Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I had not shared the screen. I'm surprised no one told me. Huh? I thought you would tell me. I mean, I did not receive any message. I have not shared the screen. Suddenly I saw that I couldn't see any. I could see only my screen. I thought, I mean, I hope you all are awake and present, because the videos are not on. So just at least one or two of you just send me a message that you are still there. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. No, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was sharing the recap, but I was sharing Chaitanya Shikshamrit recap. I had maximized my screen, but I didn't realize that I didn't share the screen. Okay. So I'm sorry, I again shared the wrong. Okay, thank you. So many of you are. This is very encouraging. Anyway, so, but of course, even if you had shared, sent me the message, I would not have seen because I was not in Zoom. Anyway, so he says, so this is perceived as a Pishachi by the suffering living entity. In reality, she is not a Pishachi. That's the point. So in reality, Mayadevi is not a Pishachi. So that's the point that he is being mentioned. जीवेर स्वरूप है कृष्णेर नित्यदास कृष्णेर तटस्थ शक्ति बेदा बेद प्रकाश सूर्यांश किरण येचे अग्निज्वाला छय स्वाभाविक कृष्णेर तीन प्रकार शक्ति है. So he says that it is the living entity's constitutional position to be Krishnera Jivera Swarupai Krishnera Nityadas. Krishnera Tatastha Shakti Beda Beda Prakash. And because he is the marginal energy of Krishna, there is simultaneous oneness and difference from the Lord. Like a particle of sunshine with sun or fire with fire spark, like that. And then he says Krishna has three varieties of energy. Then he says, Yeita Brahmanda Bari Ananta Jivagana Chaurashi Laksha Yonite Kare Brahman. He talks about how these living entities, Tatastha Jivas, Baddhas, can take one of the 84 lakh species. You know, they can take, you can say like the species. They can accept one of these forms. Keshagra Shateka Baga Puna Shatam Shakari Tarasama Sukshma Jivera Swarupa Vichari. So talking about the nature of this Jiva Tattva, he says that 1/10,000 the tip of the hair, that is the size of the Jiva, that is how subtle it is. Maya Disha Maya Vasha Ishvara Jive Beda Hena Jive Ishvara Saha Kahata Abeda. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that look, the Jiva is Maya Disha, he is the controller of Maya, whereas the Jiva is Maya Vasha. So this is the difference between Ishvara and Jiva. So this is such a powerful difference, and still you are claiming that Aham Brahmasmi means I am the Lord, that the Jiva and the Lord are non-different. How is it possible? Gita Shastre Jiva Rupa Shakti Kari Mane Hena Jiva Bedakara Ishvarera Sane. So in Gita also it is very clearly mentioned that the Jiva is a Shakti. Apareyam Mitastanyam Prakritim Viddime Param. Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho Yayedam Darite Jagat, Krishna says. So still you say that the living entity is not different from the Lord? How is it possible? So therefore, he says that from this it is very clear that the Lord expands. Krishna has unlimited inconceivable energies, and he has his personal expansions in the form of Swamsha and separated expansions in the form of Vibhinnamsha, which are Jivas, right? And the Swamsha are the Vishnu Tattvas, the Vibhinnamsha are the Jiva Tattvas. And then apart from that, Swamsha are, he performs activities in his Swamsha forms. They are under the control of Chit Shakti, right? And they are all, but ultimately, even though there are many Swamsha forms, the Murti Shukala Niyamena Tishtan, Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu, Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So even though there are unlimited forms, but still Krishna is the original form. Deepar Chireva Hidashantaram Abhyupetya, right? So like that he mentions. And then he talks about the very subtle nature of Jiva by quoting verses from the 11th canto. Sukshmanam apyaham jivo. The Lord himself says that of all the subtle things, I am the Jiva, right? And then he talks about the Tatastha Shakti, about how it falls between the Chit Shakti and Maya Shakti. And then he explains that how Maya is not intrinsic to Jiva, but because of the Jiva's minute nature, it can be attracted to Maya. And also because of its proximity to Maya, like that. Right? Then he also defines who is a Nitya Baddha and a Nitya Bhukta. He quotes from the 11th canto. He says, Vidyamayo yaha satu Nitya Mukta, yaha avidyaya yuk satu Nitya Baddha. So one who is endowed with the Maya Shakti, who is controlled by the Maya Shakti, he is Nitya Baddha. And one who is controlled by the Chit Shakti, he is Nitya Mukta, like that he says. Okay. So, and he says that as long as the Jiva utilizes his free will to serve Krishna, he is fine. But when he forgets his position and he forgets his service to Krishna, then he becomes deluded by Maya and controlled by karma. Okay. And when they realize again, when such a conditioned soul again realizes his inherent nature in service to Krishna, then they again become free from the bondage of karma and affliction of Maya. In this context, we saw Bhayam Dvitiya Abhiniveshita Syat, how this whole thing happens. So then he says, Nitya Baddha, we saw many meanings of Nitya Baddha. One meaning of Nitya Baddha is that the living entity, before the creation started, before even the time element was released by Krishna through his glance, the living entity was still conditioned and it was staying in that conditioned state inside the body of Mahavishnu. So Nitya there refers to even before actually material time was put into play. Even before that, actually the living entity was bound. So that is another meaning of Nitya Baddha. So then he gives another analogy to explain Nitya Mukta and Nitya Baddha. So he gives the example of a snake and a human being. As a human being, even though understanding that his own presence in this material world is limited or temporary, he puts so much effort to build a house, maintain the house and all that, energy, time, efforts, everything, endeavors. But the snake does not bother. So a rat or some other thing has made a hole. The snake goes, eats that rat and stays there. He does not bother to make houses. So the point is that it's not, he's not recommending that we go and we should not waste our time constructing houses. We should rather go and kill other people and stay in their houses. This is not what he's indicating. The point that he's making is, don't waste your time in trying to make a permanent situation in the temporary world. Rather, tasyaiva hetoho prayateta kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyadah tallabhyate dukkavadanyata sukam kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. He says that don't spend all your time trying to go to places which are put your endeavor in achieving those things which are available in the 14 planetary worlds, because whatever is available in the 14 planetary worlds is antavat. It is temporary. Rather, one should endeavor to achieve a permanent abode, which is by practice bhakti and achieve the abode of the Supreme Lord. So then he says that since the jiva is a part of the whole consciousness, the jiva is also a conscious particle, but different from Krishna. So he's a part, because the part is different from the full, there is a Beda. And because the jiva is also energy, because he's Shakti, therefore there is Abeda. So in this way, the jiva has an Achintya Beda Abeda relationship with Krishna. That's what he's telling here. Okay. So like, so therefore you cannot say that the jiva is the same as Brahman, like that. So, but the jiva, because he is also spiritual, he can also be called as Brahman in the sense qualitative oneness. So we were listening to Srila Prabhupada's class When was that? Day before yesterday. No, yesterday. So yesterday, while we were doing DT worship, Prabhupada was speaking, and Prabhupada, very interesting. First time I noticed Prabhupada telling that. So Prabhupada said the jivas are uh, qualitatively one with Krishna. How many of you have heard this Prabhupada either write this or speak about this? The jivas are qualitatively one with Krishna. How many of you have heard this or read Prabhupada writing about it? You can just type on the chat box. Have you ever heard this? Yeah, right. But you know what Prabhupada mentioned in that lecture? Prabhupada said, jivas are qualitatively one with Krishna. And then he said, almost. I was very thrilled to hear this because Prabhupada did say, almost. Almost means what? Krishna has 64 qualities and the jiva has only 50 qualities. So the jiva is not actually qualitatively same. The jiva is qualitatively similar to Krishna. So it's not qualitative oneness. Prabhupada just uses that word, but in reality, it's not qualitative oneness, but it is qualitative similarity. There are 50 similar qualities, or you can say oneness also, but oneness of not all, oneness of only 50 qualities. Other 14 qualities only Krishna has. The jiva does not have even in minute quantity, right? So like that. So as Krishna's inconceivable Vibhinna Amshas, the jivas take up variety of material forms such as devatas, humans, yakshas, etc. Like that. Okay. Anyway, among all the forms, however, that of the human being is considered the best, for it is most suitable for practicing devotional service. So even though he says that there are many forms that the jiva can take, but the human form is the best form. This is where we ended. Sorry, it was a long recap, but still. Anyway, before we start today's discussion, if you have any quick comments, questions, discussion points based on what we have discussed till now, recap till now, you can please raise your hands. We can discuss for a while and then we can move forward. Anything anyone would like to ask, share, discuss? Anything? Anyone? Okay. So if it was clear, then we will move ahead. We will continue our discussion. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, but even in the human form, he says, among all the forms, however, that of the human is considered the best, for it is the most suitable for practicing devotional service. That's why Srila Rupa Goswami also says, what is the qualification for bhakti? He says, nrumatrasya adhikarita. Okay. So he says, nrumatrasya adhikarita. He says, as one who is a human being can practice bhakti as long as he has that faith. But animals cannot consciously practice bhakti. Very rare. Cases like Bharat Maharaj who became a deer, but that was a rare case. Otherwise, humans cannot practice bhakti in one sense. Sorry, animals cannot practice bhakti. Very rare cases. So you will see only very unique cases like Gajendra, or who because of a curse became like that. Or the case of Bharat Maharaj where Krishna personally orchestrated it. Otherwise, it is very difficult. Or the puppy of Lord Chaitanya, Shivananda Saints dog, or the dog that Shivananda Sain was feeding Mahaprasad. Those are very, very rare cases, but in reality, it is not completely impossible, but at the same time, it's highly improbable that any non-human species can practice bhakti consciously. So today only, just before this Chaitanya Siksamrita discussion, we were discussing from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Prahlad Maharaj also, in his discussion with Narada Muni, he makes this point that how can a 5-year-old child consciously practice bhakti? because a 5-year-old child does not have developed intelligence. He does not have developed intelligence to ascertain what is right and what is wrong. So, so a 5-year-old or less than 5-year-old child can practice the limbs of bhakti only because the parents may force the child to practice, or the child himself may like doing certain things like eating prasadam and dancing and kirtan and singing and jumping and all that the child may like, but he's not consciously doing because it is right, because it will enhance his devotional service, because the Lord says, because the Shastras say. So if this is the case with even infants, human infants, then what to speak of animals? They don't have any evolved consciousness. So they cannot consciously practice bhakti, but still you can feed a dog Mahaprasadam, and the dog by eating that prasadam can gain Agyata Sukriti. That is possible, but he cannot practice bhakti. And another point is, yeah, if he was already a devotee, then why would such a person take a animal birth also, right? So because devotees can never get any animal birth, can never take animal birth. So even if we may stop practicing devotional service right now, still we will not get animal birth. Human birth is guaranteed, right? So at the most in an animal birth, one can actually assimilate Agyat Sukriti only. But to consciously practice bhakti, it is not impossible, but it is highly improbable. Just like the Devatas say, oh, we want to take birth in Bharatvarsha because because here in heavenly planets, there is Atishaya Indriya Utsava. There is so much sense gratification that it is highly improbable to stay focused on practicing devotional service like that. But it's not impossible. Yeah, someone is raising his hands. Please go ahead. Unmute yourself and speak. Realme 5. Realme 5. You can unmute yourself and speak, Ice, if there is a question. Okay, by mistake, someone raised the hands. Okay, it's fine, no problem. Okay. So, okay, and yeah, someone says, yeah, becoming a monkey in Vrindavan. Yeah, it's fortunate. Yeah, sometimes, yeah. People who do some very serious dhamma parad, even though they may be devotees, sometimes they may be orchestrated to take birth as in a lower species in Vrindavan, but those monkeys are special monkeys. They are not ordinary monkeys. Yeah. Right. So those are like very rare cases. So, but even in human form, the jivas experience both hellish existence and heavenly delights. See, what we'll do is, because it's a small group of people only somehow today, maybe due to Karthik, many devotees are traveling to Vrindavan and other places. Probably that's why I don't see many people have joined. So what I suggest is, because it's a small group, we can afford to stop whenever devotees have a question. So you don't have to wait till I ask you for questions. Anytime you have a question, you can please raise your hands. We can have a discussion. So just remember it. So I'm not going to pause for questions. I may pause also, but you don't have to wait till I pause. You can please, if there is any quick comments. Yes, Sachi Pran Bro.
Dandat Pranam.
Dandat Bro. Yes, bro.
The monkeys in the Vrindavan said that they are in animal body, but we heard that every tree and the plant and the creeper in Vrindavan is Chintamani.
That is also there. That is also there. That is also there. But some of the monkeys can be eternal associates also. But some of the monkeys, as Prabhupada himself personally did say, that if you go to a dham and try to enjoy in the dham and do some gross mistakes there, then Krishna may punish you by giving you one life in a lower species like a monkey, and then after that you can perfect your life like that. Prabhupada did say that.
Thank you, brother.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat
Prabhu,
Pranam.
sorry for asking you again. Can you please clarify who are Nitya Parshadas and Nitya Muktas and Nitya Siddhas? I am still not clear.
Well, as I mentioned to you before, Nitya Parshadas, I mean, this terminology is actually, if you see, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma seems to use a different terminology, and in Caitanya Siksamrita he is seemingly using a slightly different terminology. So one usage of the word Nitya Mukta. So Nitya Mukta is differentiated from Nitya Parshada. It means Nitya Parshadas are always under the control of Chit Shakti. But Nitya Muktas are Tatastha Jivas who have chosen liberation but not necessarily Krishna Prem. So, so they are Nitya Muktas. But sometimes in Chaitanya Shikshamrit or in Chaitanya Charitamrit, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami seems to use Nitya Mukta to as being almost synonymous with Nitya Parshada. So he does not make such an elaborate differentiation. So it depends. So you have to see the context in which the terminology is used, because these terminologies do not have, apparently they don't have a universal meaning. So context wise the meaning changes. So like that. And Nitya Siddhas, you can say it depends on, you can say a Nitya Siddha can be a Nitya Mukta also. If he a Nitya Siddha can be, or a Sadhana Siddha can be, can go to Brahmajyoti also. If his sadhana is actually Jnana Sadhana, then the Siddhi would be to remain in, to go to Brahmajyoti. And the Sadhana Siddha can become a Parshada. Sadhana Siddha Parshada. If that sadhana is pure devotional sadhana, then that Siddhi would be to go to the spiritual world and become an associate of Krishna. So in that case, that sadhana siddha would become a sadhana siddha parshada. Or if one who is practicing jnana sadhana, he can become a sadhana siddha mukta, but not a parshada. Like that. Is that clear, bro?
So Sadhana Siddha Parshadas, they are still Tatastha Shakti only.
No, they seem like Tatastha Shakti, but they have come into the grips of Chit Bala. They have not accessed the Chit Shakti. So they are no longer, for all practical purposes, they are not Tatastha Jivas.
Okay. That means they are not susceptible for
no.
falling to Maya.
Yeah, they are not susceptible to falling to Maya.
Oh, this is the position of Sadhana Siddha Parshadas, as well as Nitya Parshadas.
Correct.
Whereas the Nitya Muktas,
the Nitya Muktas also, in one sense, they have not come in touch with the Maya Shakti. So even though they are Tatastha, but still they have not come in touch with the Chit Shakti also. At the same time, they have chosen to turn their face away from Maya eternally. But their position is completely secure only if they come in touch with the Chit Shakti of the Lord.
So until they come under Chit Shakti of the Lord, they continue to be
in Brahmajyoti only.
Transitory stage.
Transitory stage, but in Brahmajyoti.
In Brahmajyoti.
Yeah.
That means they are susceptible to fall under Maya.
Yeah, but because of that lack of proximity, they may not. because in Brahma Jyoti, the Maya is not very close. So because they have,
is their position secure in Brahma Jyoti?
yeah.
So they are secure.
Yeah.
Only thing is they are not still under the Chit Shakti.
Yeah, they are not under the Chit Shakti.
Okay, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Anything else before we move ahead? Okay, let's continue then. Okay, so then Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. Forgetting Krishna, the jivas under the control of Maya seek to fulfill a variety of desires. Right? The minute conscious particle, the jiva, is by nature the servant of Krishna, the complete conscious being. Right? Jivera Swarupai Krishna Nityadas. Service to Krishna is the nature of the jiva. This is the real nature of jiva. Forgetting this eternal nature, the living remain in bondage. When they forget, then they turn their face away from Krishna. Then Maya takes over. Then Maya gives them a false identity. Then identifying with that false identity, they get into the world of dualities. And then when they get into the world of dualities, then they are completely consumed by the anxiety of samsara. Like that. When the jivas remember their eternal nature, they attain freedom. The inherent power or shakti of the living conscious entity is also present in the tiny conscious jivas, but in minute degree. Okay, so the power of, or the energy of Krishna is also there in the jiva, but to a minute degree. Therefore, the jivas are almost without power by their very nature. Almost without power, because they are anyway infinitesimal in size, so their energy is also infinitesimal. So for all practical purposes, you can say that they have hardly any energy. But in the liberated state, the jivas gain the shakti from Krishna, and to that degree they become powerful. But the more they get liberated, they gain power from Krishna, and that power is not impeded by their identification with the material dull matter. Just by thinking themselves spiritual entities, the jivas cannot obtain that power. This type of liberation is called nirvana. By identifying themselves as servants of Krishna, the jivas obtain power from Krishna and finally attain eternal bliss. So there are two types of liberation. That which he is talking about. First is Sayuja Mukti, and the second is Krishna Prema. So he says, Sayuja Mukti is Aham Brahmasmi. I am a spiritual particle. Of course, here I am Aham Brahmasmi does not mean I am the Lord, but they understand that I am a spirit soul. I am not this body, and my goal is to merge in the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. This is Sayuja or Nirvana, Brahma Nirvana. Okay, so but they don't get any power in one sense. They are not bestowed with significant power or Shakti. But when they identify themselves as Krishna, Jivera Swaruphoy Krishnera Nityadas, then they actually, Krishna's Nityadas gets a part of Krishna's energy also. Right? Fear, which is the byproduct of material illusion, is removed completely in the second kind of mukti. The various forms that the conditioned jiva takes are but the result of the individual actions. So he quotes a verse from the 11th canto. I will read the verse and translation just to keep you engaged. Okay, you have to tell me why Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting this verse. Okay, so this is Krishna speaking to the 11th canto, 22nd chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mana karmamayam nrinam indriyair panchabhiryutam lokal lokam prayatyanya atma tad anuvartate. So here the Supreme Lord says, Nrinam Manaha, the material mind of a man, Karmamayam, depending on karma, Prayati. So here Karmamayam means it refers to Vasanamayam. Is dependent on the material impressions. Okay. So many times the word karma is used to indicate reactions, but it also is used to indicate vasana also. As in karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. So that karmashayam, their karma refers to not the knot of karma as such, as in karma as reaction. So karmashayam there refers to karma as in vasana, material impressions, right? So the material mind of man dependent on karma travels along with the five senses from one material body to another material body. The Atma, although different from this mind, follows it, right? What is that verse? Vayur Gandha Nivashayat. What is the 15th chapter verse? Anyone recollects? How does that Shrota, is it Shrotram Chakshus Parshanam Charasanam? What is that? Yeah, Krishna Prabhu, what is the beginning? What is the beginning of that verse? Yes, Prabhu, I have unmuted you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yathakashasthitva nityam vayus sarvatra go mahan.
No, not that. Vayur Gandha Nivashayat, 15th chapter. How the jiva transmigrates from one body to another body, being carried by the subtle body, it says. So okay, if you remember, you can just let me know. It comes in that same series. Utkramantam sthitam vapi bunjanam va gunanvitam. The verse before that or after that? Yes, bro.
Shariram yadavapnoti yachapyutkramati.
Correct. Shariram yadavapnoti yachapi utkramatishvarah grihitvetani samyati vayur gandhan ivashayat. So it talks about the transmigration of the jiva from one gross body to another gross body. It carries with it the subtle body also. So vayur gandhan ivashayat. So just like wind carries fragrance from one place to another place. So the subtle body carries the soul, you can say, or the soul carries the subtle body from one gross body to another gross body, right? So Vayu is soul. Gandha is also called as Vasana. So that Vasana is the nature of the subtle body. The Vasana is stored in the subtle body. Vayur Gandhan Ivashayat. So the transmigration of the soul from one gross body to another gross body, how it pulls the subtle body with it, just like wind pulls the fragrance from a flower garden. Just like yesterday, we were just going for a walk after the Damodara Ashtakam. I was just with one another devotee. We were just going for a walk, and we were walking through the garden of Gulchadi tuberosus, or it's also called as Nishigandha. Such intoxicating smell, actually. It was so amazing smell. Especially at night, they are so fragrant when you pass through that that place where the where those tuberoses have been planted. They are so intoxicating smell. So and it goes on for a while, even after some time, when you cross that flower garden also, it goes for a while, and then it dies, right? So the wind carries the fragrance from one place to another place. Similarly, the soul carries the subtle body from one gross body to another gross body, right? That is what is indicated here. So now, so he says the Atma, although different from this mind, follows it. So now I will read the various forms that the conditioned jiva takes are but the result of individual actions. And the individual action is triggered by the material mind. That's why he is quoting this verse to here. Individual material actions of the jiva are triggered by the material mind. Okay. Though the jiva accepts the qualities of the material world, they are not the constitution of the jiva. This is the point. Okay. So that the jiva actually accepts because he is identifying with his linga sharira. And that linga sharira can be manipulated by the ropes of sattva-guna, rajaguna, and tamoguna. But the moment he gives up identifying with that linga sharira, then there is no control by the three modes. What example did I give to establish this? Anyone remembers? You can type on the chat box. What example did I give to establish this point? Let's see how many people, how many of you attentively heard. I'm just waiting so that you will type and send me. Yes, I have received one answer. Anyone else? When you send me answers, you send it not to everyone, but send it just to me so that others also can think and answer. Anyone else? Yeah, magnet and iron rod. That was example. So when you catch hold of the iron rod in front of a powerful magnet, when the magnet pulls the iron rod, you are also pulled towards that magnet. Radha Damodar Prabhu says he is apologizing that he did not attend. He did not listen attentively. Okay, at least he is honest. Okay, so but when you give up that iron rod, when you are not holding on to that iron rod, the magnet has no inherent ability to attract a human body. Even though we may have some iron content in our body in the form of our blood, our blood may have some iron content, but that is not good enough to be attracted by a magnet. It is like that. So if a person believes that the jiva is actually a product of maya, then that person is a mayavadi. Okay, the jivas are in reality pure spiritual entities under the spiritual potency. The jivas are pure spiritual entities under the spiritual potency. Okay, there is a hand raised. Madhavi, just hold on for 1 second. Just few points I will cover and then I will unmute you. But keep your hands up. But because of the marginal nature of the jivas, they have a tendency to become bound by maya. Okay. But they are only forgetting their inherent nature, which is service to Krishna. The pure jiva state, form, and transformations are all spiritual. The jiva cannot be actually controlled by maya. That is reality. So for some reason, the Lord is quoting this verse. Let's see if we can find out why the Lord is quoting this verse. This is also 11th canto, 26th chapter, 1st verse. Okay. He says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Madlakshanam imam kayam labdva madharma astitah anandam paramatmanam atmastam samupaiti mam imam kayam labdva. Having achieved this human form of life, mad lakshanam, which affords one the opportunity to realize Krishna, Mad Dharma Astitah, and being situated in Mad Dharma, which is devotional service, Samupaitimam, one can attain me. And who is Krishna? Anandam Paramatmanam, a form of complete bliss, Atmastam, who is residing within one's heart. So he says, why is this verse being quoted here? I want you to answer. Anyone would like to answer this? You can either raise your hands or you can type it in the chat box. Go over the translation and tell me why this verse is being quoted here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You have to more actively participate actually. Because here Krishna says, having achieved this human form in which you can actually realize me, you should, by being situated in my devotional service, you can achieve me. That's what he says. Why this verse is quoted here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur? What is he trying to establish? Okay, someone is answering. Okay. Krishna Prabhu says, talking about free will. Okay, Tarani Priyamataji says, human form is the qualification to practice bhakti. Well, okay. But let us go back to the statement that he is actually talking about. He says, the jivas are in reality pure spiritual entities under the spiritual potency, but because of the marginal nature of the jivas, they have a tendency to become bound by Maya. But they are only forgetting their inherent nature, which is service to Krishna. Okay, the pure jiva state, form, and transformations are all spiritual. So, how do you, this whole material experience is due to forgetting our relationship with Krishna. But when we revive our inherent relationship with Krishna, then we don't undergo these material transformations. So how do you revive this? That is by bhakti. Okay. So in order to indicate that he's quoting this verse. So revival of our constitutional relationship with Krishna is possible only by devotional service. That is what he is indicating here. Okay. So, because they are of infinitesimal nature, the living entities become bound by Maya. First, the subtle mental body covers the pure form. So this is the Linga Sharira. You remember? The subtle body. This is the subtle mental body. And then when the time comes to act in the world, the gross body is suitable to the action it deserves, covers the body. This is the Stula Sharira. Okay. The subtle and gross forms are but abnormal conditions induced by Maya upon the pure soul's form. Therefore, there is some similarity between the two forms. Okay. Like that. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether make up the gross body. Mind, intellect, and false ego make up the subtle body. In order to prove this, proof of constitution of gross and subtle body. He quotes this verse. Bhumirapo nalo vayu kammano buddhirevacha ahankara itiyemme binna prakritirashtada. Okay. So Bhumirapo, Analo, Vayu, Kham. These five are gross. And Mano, Buddhir, Ahankar. These three are subtle. So he quotes this verse. Anyway. But the Jiva is superior to them. So he quotes this next verse. Apareyam itastwanyam prakritim viddime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dari. Iyam apara. This is my inferior energy. This 5 plus 3 is inferior energy. But with the two, but you should understand, me param prakritim, that I have a superior energy, itastu anyam, which is different from this energy. What is that? Jiva bhutam mahabaho. It is the jivas. Yaya idam dharyate jagat, who employ the inferior energy for their enjoyment. So, jivas are parashakti. superior energy. In order to explain that, he quotes this verse. Anyway, so there is one hand up, and there is a question in the chat box also. So I'll take the chat box question, question first, and then we will take the Madhavi Gopi Mataji's question. So the question in the chat box is how to stop identifying with the subtle body. So what does it mean? First thing, before even discussing about how to stop identifying with the subtle body, first let's start understanding what does it mean to identify with one's own subtle body. Who wants to answer? Who wants to answer? What does it mean to identify with one's subtle body? You can either raise your hands. Madhavi Gopi Mataji, would you like to answer this question? Because I don't know, you have raised your hands. But do you want to answer this question also? What does it mean to identify with the subtle body? What does it mean?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
Then with Prabhuji, what I understood from this is identifying with the subtle body means the thing which does not belong to us, like the desires or the sukshma, whatever chas and all. Soul adopts that when he means actually that does not belong to soul, but because he adopts that, there is a identification with the subtle body, and then that will lead to
identifying with our thoughts, desires, right? That is actually identifying with the subtle body. Okay, one answer that I'm getting in the chat box is identify with the material mind, ego, and material intelligence. Yeah, you have to elaborate it a little more on that. So identifying with the material mind means identifying with material emotions. So the kind of emotions that we may feel with material things, material people, material relationships, if we are identifying with them, if we allow them to control our lives, then it is material, then it is identifying with the subtle body. And also identifying with the ego. The false ego identifies with the who I am, and on that platform, when we take that identification very seriously, so that is also actually identifying with the subtle body. So now how to stop identifying with the subtle body? This is actually, for that we will have to develop alternative identity only. We will have to purify our subtle body ultimately. So all the material vasanas have to be purified from the subtle body. But even before that, we can start creating our proper identification, as in because our original relationship is Jivera Swarupai Krishna Nityadas, servant of Krishna. So we have to develop that that identification, which in Manas Siksha, in the very first verse, Krishna says, sorry, Raghunath Das Goswami says, Gurau Goshte Goshtalayishu Sujane Bhusuragane Swamantre Shri Namni Vrajanavayuvad Dvandva Sharane. So he says, how do you develop your proper identity, and how do you stop identifying with the subtle body? He says, develop the right identification. How? He says, Atitaram Apurvam Atitaram Ratim Kuru. He says, try to develop an unprecedented, intense attraction or relationship with these 8 things connected to Krishna. Gurau means to the Siksha Guru and Diksha Guru. Goshte means to Vrindavan. Goshtalayeshu to the Vrajavasis. Sujane to all the Vaishnavas. Bhusuragane to the Brahmanas. Swamantre, develop attraction to the Gayatri mantra that is given to you. Shri Namni, develop attraction to the holy name that is given to you. Vraja Navayuva Dvandva Sharane, and develop an attraction and attachment to the process of surrendering to the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan. So by this, gradually our material subtle body gets dissolved and a proper identification is developed. This is one thing. And again in Bhagavatam also, this is mentioned. There are various aspects of subtle body. Okay, so there are 4 aspects of subtle body. First is called as Atma Buddhi. Okay, then there is Swabuddhi. Then there is Swadikkalatradishu Bhauma Ijjadi. Yes, this. So okay, there is so much noise happening around. I'm getting really distracted. I'm sorry. So there is some Vrindavan Parikrama. I'm not. I shouldn't call it noise. Actually, there is some Krishna Katha happening. Mobile Krishna Katha, because people are around going here on Vrindavan Parikrama. So there is some Vrindavan Katha that is going on. I'm not sure if you are able to hear it, but I am able to very clearly hear, and I'm not able to concentrate. That's why I'm sorry. Atma Buddhi, Swabuddhi, Swadik Kalatradishu Bhauma Ijya Buddhi, and Tirtha Buddhi. So I am just trying to explain how you can develop, how you can stop identifying with the subtle body. See, the subtle body or our material identification has 4 aspects. Okay, one is Atma Buddhi. Who am I? For a materialist, Yasyatma Buddhi Kunape Tridatuke. He says body, gross or subtle. He says I am the body. Okay, and Swabuddhi. Swabuddhi means what belongs to me. For a materialistic person, what do I own? He says wife, money, home, etc. Okay, and then Ijya Buddhi. Ijya Buddhi means what is worshipable. What is worshipable? He says yes, Bhauma Ijyadi, place of birth. Wherever I have taken birth, that place of birth is very worshipable, he thinks. And then Tirtha Buddhi. Tirtha Buddhi means what is a place of pilgrimage? What is a place of pilgrimage according to him? Where I can wash my sins. Where I can go take bath, wash my sins, so that I don't have to suffer. This is for a materialistic person. These are the symptoms of bodily identification. Now, for a spiritual person, for a devotee, he says, Yasyatma Buddhi Kunape Tridatuke Swadik Kalatradishu Bhauma Idyadi Yas Tirtha Buddhi Salilena Karhichit Janeshu Abhigyeshu Shayeva Gokara. He says, such a person who has these kind of identities, Atma Buddhi, Swabuddhi, Ijya Buddhi, and Tirtha Buddhi with respect to his body, Bhagavatam says, Sayeva Gokara. He is just like a ass. He is just like an animal. But what about devotees? As devotees, what should be our identification? He says, Atma Buddhi. Who am I? I am Vaishnavadas. So who belongs to me? So what belongs to me? So he says, Vaishnavas are my only property. Or Vaishnavas grace, Vaishnavas mercy. Dhana Mora Nityananda, Pati Mora Gaurachandra, Prana Mora Yugala Kishore, right? Advaita Acharya Bala, Gadadhara Mora Kula, Nara Hari Vilasei more. So whatever belongs to me are all Vaishnavas, right? Ijya Buddhi. Ijya Buddhi means what is worshipable. Huh? What is worshipable? Vaishnava Sangha is worshipable. And what is a place of pilgrimage? Where Shravan Kirtan is happening, that is a place of pilgrimage. This is the meaning of Na Karhichit Abhiggeshu Janeshu. He is not having this identification with respect to devotees. So, how do we stop identifying with the subtle body? By gradually developing these 4 identities with respect to Krishna and the Vaishnavas. Who am I? What belongs to me? What is worshipable? And what is a place of pilgrimage? Like that. Is that okay? Is that a relevant answer to the question? Okay. So, Madhavi Gopi Mataji, you can please go ahead and ask.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, there are actually 2-3 questions. Two questions regarding the what we discuss about soul and subtle body, and 2 questions regarding the Shakti which is offered to different souls, which we discussed some time back, maybe just before this. Regarding the soul, I have one confusion for myself. I'm not able to understand whether the soul really pulls the subtle body, or it is vice versa, like subtle body pulls the soul. Who has that? Because soul to begin with is a pure entity, and it has nothing to do with the material world as such. So from where uh, who pulls that time? Like how can such a pure soul pull a subtle body which has desires and vasanas? And if not, soul is pulling and the subtle body is pulling the soul, then like under what influence it happens?
Because the jiva is spiritual, but also because of his tatastha nature, he can identify with material body. So that attachment to that subtle body or identification with the subtle body is what pulls. Like say, for example, if we get attracted to a particular person, right? So then wherever that person goes, we may run behind that person. So he is not literally pulling us, but in one sense, that person is pulling us, right? Because of our attraction. But the moment we give up that attraction, then no one is pulling anyone in one sense. But that is the nature of the soul, is such that it can get influenced and by identifying with the material body. That's the
Okay, so it means essentially jivas who are in the tatastha zone, they are prone anytime to get attracted to this end, like material end.
Yeah.
If they don't, but I don't know, means in that state, Prabhuji, when they are tatastha, still they have not got any subtle body or something, they are not identified with it. So that time, what is...
No, tatastha jivas always have subtle body.
Oh, that, so already they have received subtle body, that means.
Yeah. They may not have, see, when the tatastha jivas always have subtle body.
So that's what my question is, Prabhuji. Then before getting this subtle body, they were not tatastha, right?
Before, that is what originally we discussed. This before, after and all, this is something which we will not understand at this stage.
Okay,
because
fine.
we will start thinking in terms of material time and material space. This is something, this before after questions at our stage, it's difficult to understand. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
And one more thing was, you mentioned while discussing that when subtle body gets cleansed of all material desires. So that time I was a little confused regarding whether when the subtle body and soul separate, at whatever stage. So
At the
whether
time,
it is,
okay, at
pardon?
whatever stage, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, means at the time of when one is liable to get liberation, so
Yeah,
that time
yeah,
they will separate. So that time subtle body gets cleansed of its material desires, or there is a divorce between soul and subtle body. Subtle body
well,
may have desires, but still soul gets separated from it. That is why.
see, subtle body gets separated means for the jnanis, what it means is the subtle body becomes non-functional for the jnanis because they have cleansed the material impurities from the subtle bodies, but they have not activated any the spiritual potential of the subtle body, because subtle body is also in one sense constitutionally spiritual only, but functionally it can be either or um, material or spiritual. Or let's say I will give you the example of a CD. So in a CD can be empty. You can, I will give you the analogy. Now you tell me what that analogy means. I have a CD. You can record cinema music in that CD. You can record kirtans and bhajans in that CD, or you can keep that CD without any recording. It's just empty. So now, can you please identify what these three states of CD refers to?
Yeah, like possessor of the CD is the soul, and the CD which doesn't have anything written in it is the subtle body of a yogi who is in a state of liberation, but he has so there is no material impressions. At the same time, he is not interested in writing any spiritual impressions on it.
Correct, correct, correct.
And the one means those who are loading in it the material songs and something, they are like the subtle body which has the impressions of material vasanas and things, and which will pull jiva down to the material
Correct,
world.
correct.
And the one who loads kirtan in it is the subtle body of a devotee who is about to enter the spiritual world, who has wiped out all the material impressions, but he has written down on it the spiritual impressions, which will help it
Perfect.
to go up.
So you're right. Perfectly you have answered. Now, when the Shastras talk about divorce between the soul and the subtle body, what it means is that the subtle body becomes non-functional. So for a it's as good as getting divorced only, because what will you do with an empty CD? You cannot listen to any songs. You can have 100 empty CDs. So is there any utility? Can you have any entertainment out of it? Nothing. So in one sense, for all practical purposes, it is divorced only. But in reality, it is not divorced. It is there in a non-functional form. So when Shastras talk about divorce, it means it becomes non-functional. For devotees, it gets, for sadhakas, it's a CD in which some part of it is cinema songs, some part of it is kirtans, bhajans. It's like it's like suddenly kirtan bhajan is playing, and the next song suddenly one cinema song starts playing. It's like that because we have both material impressions and spiritual impressions. So slowly we are wiping out our material songs from the CD of our subtle body, and slowly writing more and more spiritual songs like that. Is that relevant, Madhuri?
Yes, Prabhuji, very much relevant. So, means for understanding purpose, we should know at the base of background of the mind that actually subtle body never separates from the soul. It's
In
only
one
the
sense, yes.
yeah, it's only the impressions which will change.
Yeah.
And
but sometimes you may say that the Shastras may say, look, abhi when you are talking with someone, अरे कुछ सुनने के लिए CD है क्या? अगर कोई पूछता है, someone may ask, सुनने के लिए कुछ CD है? Do you have any CD to hear? He may say no. In reality, he may have some CD, but that's an empty CD. But you understand the context, na? The context is he wants सुनने के लिए CD चाहिए उसको. पर जो CD है उससे वो सुन नहीं सकता है. He cannot hear that because there is nothing written on it. So in that way, we may talk about, at the time of liberation, the soul gives up the subtle body. Even Bhagavad Gita talks about Gatasun Agatasumscha Nanu Shochanti Pandita, as Krishna says. So what is the beginning of that verse? Second canto verse. Ashocyan Anvashocastvam Pragyavadamscha Bhashase Gatasun Agatasumscha Nanu Shochanti Pandita. So Krishna is talking about a Pandita does not get disturbed. Na Anushochanti. He does not lament for three things. He says Gata Asuhu. Gata Asuhu means that from which the life air leaves. That from which the life air leaves. So that from which the life air leaves is the gross body. Agata Asuhu. That from which the life air does not leave, which is the subtle body. And Cha indicates the soul. So the life air does not leave the subtle body till liberation. But at the time of liberation, the life air leaves the subtle body, it is mentioned. But leaves the subtle body must be understood to mean that the subtle body becomes non-functional for a person who is attaining Saijya Mukti, impersonal liberation. But for one who attains personal liberation, the subtle body, the material aspect of that subtle body is destroyed. That's all. But the spiritual aspect is there. Is that clear,
Yes.
Mataji? Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. Actually, in these classes, we are learning many new things, like whatever has been written on our CDs earlier, that gets modified. Like that's what my experience is. So it's
I mean,
good.
in one sense, I was discussing this with another devotee because we have to, in one sense, like we don't have, most of us, we study scriptures from more or less from a certificate point of view, Bhakti Shastri ho gaya, fir Bhakti Vaibhav karenge, fir. But the point is, in these kind of courses, the audience have a preset goal, and the teachers also have a preset agenda. Both
Yeah,
of them want to,
yeah.
in one sense, like quickly complete. So therefore, in such kind of courses, very you may cover some breadth, but in depth not much is covered, because both the parties don't want, actually, in one sense. So yeah, I mean, it's, in one sense, I was just
Each forum has its own
utility.
positive,
Yeah,
utility,
each
because
forum has its own utility.
sometimes it is also important that we learn Bhagavatam and go ahead, and such forums that is why this attracts me more, because we get time to understand actually in reality what are the things like.
Yeah,
So,
and the interesting thing is, the acharyas have discussed about all these things. Whatever I have spoken, it is all, most of it is as it is what I have read, either Prabhupads or Jiva Goswamis or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakurs, they have written it. They have actually written about it in detail. But just that, in the kind of courses that we may, the certificate courses, it does not allow, an opportunity either for the speaker or the hearer to actually go deep. And the problem is, there is a much more deeper problem here. Good that you brought out this point, that the deeper problem is that people, as soon as, the people who become teachers are the ones who have become teachers by going through this kind of overview courses. So one who has taken up, studied, he was a student of these overview courses, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav. Then when they understand, then they become Bhakti Shastri and Bhakti Vaibhav teachers also, because they know what to impart. So ultimately, over a period of time, what happens is that the teacher student both don't know, in one sense, because both, they have understood their purpose. पर्पस क्या है? अभी क्लास में जाके 1 घंटा में मुझे या 2 घंटा में ये चैप्टर खत्म करना है, उसमें लिए क्या क्या at the most you can cover the connections between the verses and then some important points, 1 or 2 points on the purport. That's all you have time for. So ultimately the teacher also hears only that much. He also learns only that much, and he also repeats only that much. So ultimately then it becomes a problem. So
And
I was
actually,
just discussing.
many times many things remains, just question remains like that. Whatever we get generated in the mind, it just remains like that, because you understand at one point that this is not the forum we can discuss these things.
Yeah, and in these kind of forums, generally questions are also not taken so much because there is no time for much discussion. So I mean, that is why I was just discussing with one of the devotees that we need an overhaul of our ISKCON education system only, in one sense. I feel, honestly speaking, there could be some utility for these kind of courses also, but honestly, when I take Bhagavad Gita for in detailed discussion of Bhagavad Gita, of some people who have done Bhakti Shastri and some people who have not done Bhakti Shastri, I don't see a very significant difference in their level of understanding, in one sense. More or less same.
Still,
So,
Prabhuji, when you have taken classes, Bhakti Vaibhav classes for Thana devotees and all, means you have addressed to lot many questions and lot
yeah,
many time you give. I really appreciate that how you can manage that. I don't know, but you
no,
really,
that is why I no longer take Bhakti Vaibhav classes. They have banned me from taking Bhakti Vaibhav
because
classes.
I love to listen to them, because that depends the understanding of what Bhakti Vaibhav means we are learning. That really,
Of course, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning, both have their utility,
yeah.
because ultimately you need to know the breadth also, and the individual should take the responsibility of going deep. But the problem is, unless proper guidance is there, uh, how to go deep is just by knowing the breadth, because it needs a whole different type of orientation and training to actually understand the subject matters from a more deeper perspective. So it takes time, of course. I mean, I'm glad that there are interested people and there is a forum to actually do it. So that's what we are trying to do. I mean, we have to be grateful, at least that.
Before you unmute, before you mute me, there are two things I need to ask. That we discuss about the soul gets Shakti when he's in he goes to the spiritual world. There means whatever Lord Shakti, he gets some ansha of it, and he serves the Lord there. And those who go for the means those who achieve Sayujya Mukti, they don't get that Shakti.
They cannot access it. Potentially that Shakti is there available for the Jiva, but because he has not done the necessary sadhana, he cannot access that Shakti, but potentially it's there.
Okay, means Lord has given, but that Jiva cannot assess it because of its nature.
Yeah, because he has not performed the right sadhana to access that energy.
Okay, and this that answers my second question, because I was confused regarding in third canto 32nd chapter. Lord says now that even the Sayujya Mukti jivas and the other jivas from Lord's perspective, all are equal for the Lord. So I was not understanding why the differentiation, one gets Shakti and other not. But now this is clear.
Yeah.
And this Shakti is like the working capacity Shakti or the emotional Shakti, like to
Both,
relate with
both.
the Lord. Okay.
Yeah, but primarily the ability to relate with Krishna and experience that bliss.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Prabhu, you had a question.
We were talking about the devotees who get personal liberation. They get rid of all the material vasanas, and the subtle body has no more material influences. And and it becomes only functional in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual impressions.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that same as the Swarupa or the
Yeah.
spiritual body?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that is a spiritual body that we are talking
yeah,
of.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay. If there are no further discussion points or questions, I think we will move ahead, because we need to cover some breadth also. Otherwise, we will be standing in the same station. Okay. So I was just, while I was hearing the questions, I was just scrolling through and seeing if how many more slides are there. There are about 10, 11 slides more. Let's see how far we can go. So then he continues, on removing these coverings, the jivas attain liberation from Maya. Then the spiritual forms of the jivas are revealed. So when these coverings are removed, then the spiritual form is revealed. The liberated jivas perform their actions through the senses of the soul. Okay. So here, through the senses of the soul means the subtle body is also of the same nature as the soul. That's what it means. Eating, recreation, sexual activities with women, excretory functions, sickness, injury, and suffering due to want, as found in the material world, do not exist in the spiritual body. So in the spiritual body, these material afflictions are not there. Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Daivik kleshas are not there. These activities affect only the gross body, but by identifying with the material body, the jiva falsely accepts all these activities and thus experiences material pain and pleasure. So if he would not identify with the gross body, then there is actually no suffering. The jiva need not go through these kind of sufferings. An unintelligent mind, failing to distinguish himself from material nature, thinks nature to be real. By contact with it, he becomes completely bewildered and enters the cycle of mental existence. He quotes this verse, the same as Bayam Dvitiya Abhiniveshitasyat Ishadapetasya Viparyayo Asmritihi. That same thing. So when the jiva turns his face away from Krishna, then the Avaranatmika Shakti covers his original position, and the Prakshepatmika Shakti makes him identify with the material body, and then the whole thing starts. Another verse he quotes from the 11th canto. Prakriter evam atmanam. Oh, same verse actually. An unintelligent man, failing to distinguish himself in truth from the body made of Prakriti, by contact with it, becomes absorbed in sense objects and enters into the cycle of material existence. Right? So how misidentification with the body, leads to this samsara. Then what happens? Nrityato gayata pashyan yataivanu karoti tan evam buddhi gunan pashyan aniho api anukaryate. Just as one may imitate persons whom one sees dancing and singing, similarly, the soul, although never the doer of material activities, is thus forced to imitate the qualities of the intelligence. Qualities of the intelligence here refers to qualities of the subtle body. Okay. So the jiva identifying with the subtle body, okay, that's what this is. The jiva identifying with the subtle body, okay, imitates the actions of the subtle body, like that. That's what he's quoting here. And then another next two verses. Yatambasa prachalata taravopi chalaiva chakshusha brahmyamanena drishyate brahmativa buhu yata manorata diyo vishayanu bhavo mrisha swapna drishtascha dasharha tata samsara atmanah. So this is Krishna speaking to Uddhava. So he says, just like a tree appears to move when eon in a boat moves in moving in water, the imposition affects our vision of the world. Okay, so he says that just like when you when the water is moving, the reflection on the water also moves. but the original thing is not moving. So similarly, when we are identifying with the subtle body, then the transformations of the subtle body seem to be like the transformation of the jiva only, but the jiva is not transforming, which is only the subtle body which is transforming, right? Because of identification with the subtle body, the jiva seems to undergo the same transformations as the subtle body. So in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned, Ichcha dvesha sukham dukkham sangatas chetana dhriti etat kshetram iti proktam savikaram udahritam. Krishna says in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when he is talking about what is kshetra and the transformations of the kshetra, savikaram. So he says, Ichcha dvesha sukham dukkatas chetana dhriti etat kshetram iti proktam savikaram udahritam. He says body means, he defines what the body is, then he is talking about transformations of body, whether subtle or gross body. He says Ichcha, dvesha, sukha, dukkha, all these things he says savikaram. These are all transformations of the subtle body. But because the living entity is identifying with the subtle body, he thinks, I am actually happy, I am having a desire, I am hating someone or something. Ichcha, dvesha, sukham, dukkham. I am happy, I am sad. And all these things are vikara of the subtle body, but because of his identification with the subtle body, he thinks he is undergoing the same transformations. Arte hi avidyamanepi samsritirna nivartate dhyayato vishayanasya swapne anartagamoyata. You know what? Actually, this verse of Bhagavatam, as it is, comes in the 3rd canto also, in Kapila Dev's teachings also. Exact same verse. All 4 lines are same. Arte hi avidyamanepi samsritirna nivartate dhyayato vishayanasya swapne anartagamoyata. For one who for one who meditates on the sense objects which lack factual existence, because the soul has nothing to do with the sense objects, material existence does not go away. It is like the unpleasant experiences of a dream. Okay, so so it is like the unpleasant experiences of a dream. So unless one wakes up from a dream, his suffering is real. Okay. Similarly, unless stops identifying with the material body, his suffering is real. Right? Okay. So just like, when you are sleeping and when you are in deep sleep, not deep sleep, when you are in a dreamy state, when you are dreaming while you are, you may be undergoing an excruciating torture. It may be a very agonizing, scary dream. But until you wake up from that dream, that suffering is very much real, actually. You may cry, you may be completely, staggered and shaking in fear and things like that. These are all real. So similarly, unless one stops identifying with the material body, his suffering is also real. So here, basically, the Nitya Baddha condition of the condition of the Nitya Baddha Jiva is being described here in this series of discussions. Although persons may be liberated if they maintain pride in material knowledge or remain attached to negation of material existence, then they cannot attain a spiritual body suitable for service to Krishna in the spiritual world. See how specific this statement is. Okay. Although persons may be liberated, if they maintain pride in material knowledge, which means these people are vimukta manina, they are not really liberated. Or if they remain attached to negation of material existence, these are people who are Sayuja Mukti. Okay. Then they cannot attain a spiritual body suitable for service to Krishna in the spiritual world. That they cannot get. Otherwise, still they are liberated, but they are not ready to get a spiritual body as such. Okay, I'm sorry. Just it's really too much noise outside. Not noise, but bhajan kirtan. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so here this is the Supreme Lord speaking to Narada Muni. So I'm sure you know this story from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Supreme Lord gives his darshan to Narada Muni, and immediately after that he disappears, and then he speaks. Okay, he speaks. Hanta अस्मिन् जन्मनि भवान् मां द्रष्टुम् इह अर्हति अविपक्व कषायानां दुर्दर्शोहम कुयोगिनाम. He says, my dear Narada, अस्मिन् जन्मनि, in this body, bhavan मां drashtum iha arhati, you will not be able to see me again. Why? Kuyoginam, those who are lazy, lax practitioners, or avipakva kashayanam, or those who still have some contamination, aham durdarshaha, cannot see me at all. Right? So the point that he is making is that so this avipakva kashayanam are the karmis. So the mention here, you know, vimukta manina, those who maintain some pride in material knowledge, or kuyoginam. Kuyoginam are the gyanis. Kuyogis means they are improper yogis, because they are practicing yoga. They are practicing yoga, but they are not practicing bhakti yoga. So they are kuyogis. So these kind of yogis, they cannot get a spiritual body which through which they can establish a relationship with Krishna. That's what he's mentioning here. Liberation through devotional association gives rise to such a spiritual body. So therefore, if you see, purification of heart does not necessarily our spiritual body. Purification of heart does not necessarily reveal our spiritual body. Then what reveals? Purification of heart by devotional service reveals our spiritual body. Shravana Kirtana Jale Kareshechan. Okay. So Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta Kare Uday. Okay. Shuddha Chitta does not Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai. So the Krishna Prem does not manifest when the heart becomes cleansed. The heart has to be cleansed by Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta, by Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam. Only by devotional practices, by devotional service, when our heart becomes cleansed, only then the spiritual body is manifest. So he quotes this verse. This is again Narada Muni speaking to Vyasadeva. So this is Narada Muni to Vyasadeva. Evam Krishnamater Brahman Nasaktasya Amalatmanah Kalaha Pradurabhut Kale Tadit Saudamaniyata. O Vyasadeva, Evam Krishnamate, because of my concentrating on Krishna, nasaktasya, not being attached to material enjoyment, amalatmanah, and pure mind, kalaha pradurabhut kalida, the right time came for me to give up my material body and attain spiritual body. Tadit saudamaniyata, just like lightning flashing, the flash and the lightning comes simultaneously like that, right? So the point is that this is the point that we are discussing, that amalatmanah plus krishnamati, or amalatmanah through krishnamati, this can lead to spiritual body. Only amalatmanah through jnana or yoga leads to sayujya mukti. Sayujya mukti. Okay, that's what. Prayujyamane mayitam shuddham bhagavatim tanum arabdha karma nirvano nyapatat panchabautika. Okay, so he says, I am sorry, it's too much, not nice, Kirtan. Okay, having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the Lord, the body made of 5 material elements with karmas relating to the present body fell away. So this is further, he is describing that. I see, Prabhuji, you have raised your hands, but I don't think we may have time to take questions now, because I am just thinking maybe I will complete this. Just 2-3 more slides. I will just complete it, and then maybe next time we can take questions, or maybe we may have some time for questions. Just hold on. Okay. Okay. So he says that liberation due to association with Gyanis is only a pretense of liberation. For the Jiva, this is an unfortunate condition. So this is, here he is talking about the second kind of liberation. Okay. So the second kind of liberation is amalatmanah without krishnamati. This leads to Shayujya Mukti. This is not really liberation. This is actually like, you may say that, thank God you saved me. You did not give me that CD with the material songs in it. It would have contaminated my mind. So what have you given me now? Empty CD. I mean, how does that empty CD help? In one sense, it does not help also. At least it does not damage, but it does not help also, right? So he says, Yenya Ravindaksha Vimuktamaninas Twayasta Bhavad Avishuddha Buddhaya Aruhya Krichrena Parampadam Tataha Patantyado Anadrita Yushmadangraya. So he says, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest perfection may think themselves liberated, but their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. So such people, they do not actually attain even liberation. That's just false liberation. So in this chapter, the Jiva's pure form, conditioned form, and form in liberation have been discussed in brief. What the Jiva should do and not do will be discussed elsewhere. So that's what he's indicating here. Okay, so I will do a quick recap of this last section in our next meeting. So it's because it's already time. I don't want to take too much of your time. So thank you all very much for your patient listening and participation. Any further questions we'll take next session, because I also have to rush. I have something to do. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Siksamrita ki jai. Krishna.